All right, gearheads, welcome to the show. We just watched the Formula One Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Max Verstappen takes the win from Charles Leclerc in a great battle at the end of that race. That is what we've been looking for. That's what Formula One designed all these new cars for and all these new rules, and Max Verstappen comes out ahead, but it was a great battle. This is John Massengale sitting in the studio with Les Kaiser. How are you, Les?
Doing great. You're right. That is what we've been looking for.
Yeah, and we have Bob Varsha over Zoom. Good afternoon, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Good race.
Yeah, and we're going to have Chris Medland. He is in Saudi Arabia. He's going to try to grab some interviews for us, and he'll be back with us here shortly. Bob, what'd you think? Yeah, we get what we paid for here with these new rules and new cars?
Oh, I think definitely. Just like Bahrain last week, we saw a great pitched battle, passing and repassing between the two fastest guys on the track. And Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. We saw drama. We saw some really bad luck. I'm still feeling for our pole sitter Sergio Perez, who missed out when the yellow flag flew right after Leclerc had undercut him by stopping under green. We saw a lot of great racing, and I have to compliment the TV coverage because when the battle cooled a little bit between Leclerc and Verstappen up front, they went to the other battles, and there were plenty of them in the field, including a really dicey one between the two teammates at Alpine, Ocon and Alonso. But there were a lot of great battles through the field, people moving up and down 3, 4, 5 places from where they started. A lot of attrition. We knew that Mick Schumacher wasn't going to start, but then when 6 more cars joined him in the garages, that's the most attrition we've seen since Hungary last year when we had that big crash at the first corner. So, on the whole, I'd say it was terrific. And I always love watching these cars race under the lights because the cars just sparkle. It was great.
They really do. I love it.
Just to jump in there, chaps. Sorry to Pete time, but I've got Christian Horner right in front of me, and he's got a big smile on his face because he's just won Red Bull's first race of the season, and a great way, Christian, to respond to the disappointment of last weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a motor race! What a great race! And I think Max, he drove tactically a great race. He used the tires well at the end of the race in the straight. Obviously, there's a bit of cat and mouse in there, but between last weekend in Bahrain and this weekend in Jeddah, it's been amazing racing between both Max and Charles. So desperately unlucky for Checo with that safety car just coming out at the wrong time. But overall, a very strong weekend for him.
Yeah, do you think Checo was on for victory today? Because Charles was pushing him hard before that pit stop and then the unfortunate safety car timing.
He was pushing him hard, but Checo was controlling the gap. He had the pace. So, it was so frustrating, when that safety car, but, as we know with safety cars, sometimes they work for you, sometimes they go against you.
But what it has shown is that you have 2 drivers capable of fighting at the front, fighting for wins. How important is that going to be this season? Because Ferrari look like they're going to give you a heck of a run.
It's massively important. We can see Ferrari's got a very quick car, and it was important for us to get on the board this weekend, after the disappointment of last weekend. So, we've managed to get that first victory, and we've got to build on that now.
Yeah, what are the strengths you think that are in your car compared to Ferrari? Because from the outside, it looks like certainly straight line speed is one of those.
Well, I think we ran a little less downforce here than Ferrari, so you could see they were very quick in Sector 1. We came back at them in Sector 2 and were pretty even in Sector 3. So it was super tight between the cars today.
You didn't get much of an off-season. It was an intense 2021, but how enthused are you by how 2022 is shaping up?
Well, I think so much effort went into last year's car, in that championship battle, and we were late onto this regulation change compared to our rivals. And, I think the whole team, all the guys and girls back in Milton Keynes have just done an amazing job to come on and turn up at these first 2 races, have a pole position of victory. After the bad luck we had in Bahrain, the bounce back here has been strong.
And do you think it'll be this close in Melbourne between you and Ferrari?
I think that, it's all going to be about development now. And it looks like it's very tight between the 2 teams at the moment. So it's going to be who can unlock performance the quickest.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing how that goes. Thank you very much for your time, Christian. Sorry, they're just jumping in with Christian Horner, but he's much happier than he was 7 days ago, chaps.
Yeah, I bet everybody in the Red Bull area is excited over there because last week was a disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a real downer for them. And to be fair, when the safety car timing hurt Perez so much, they probably were fearing more of the same, that they were going to kind of lose a big opportunity, because he did have some good control of the race then. But as we saw, Verstappen managed to get it done in what I thought was a dream finish. I don't know what everyone else thought of it in terms of those final 10, 15 laps, but to see them be able to push so hard for so long was really exciting and bodes really well for this season.
Yeah, well, Chris Medland at Saudi Arabia. What else? Where are you exactly, and what's going on around you?
So I'm actually just about to try and chase Pierre Gasly down the pit lane, or down the paddock, if he's willing to chat. We've got a lot of drivers milling around at the moment doing different interviews. I've seen Alex Albon and Lance Stroll have headed down to race control to speak to the stewards, because they were in a little bit of trouble there for their contact towards the end of that race. But we've got fireworks going off as well. It's all very razzmatazz here. Actually, they try and make a big old show at the end of it. So any noises you can hear over our shoulder, which apparently you can't with this microphone, but it's so loud, so many bangs and whistles that are going on when we're in the paddock. It's amazing to me that you guys can hear me so clearly. But a heck of atmosphere actually, and I think just because everyone's so positive after such a thrilling race and the way it finished.
We can actually hear the fireworks this time, Chris, so that's good though. But it's awesome that you're right there.
As long as the Houthi rebels don't sneak one in on you during all the fireworks.
There you go.
That was one thing that was kind of mentioned, was to everyone to be aware that there was going to be a lot of noise made by fireworks after the race, so not to panic.
Good point, Bob.
Very good. Very good.
Hey, so Chris, we saw lots and lots of battles up and down. I mean, with that Alonso and Ocon and Magnussen and Hamilton. I mean, is everybody saying that these cars are just doing exactly what Formula One designed them to do?
Yes, they are. They're excited by it. I was actually in the media centre sitting with a number of other journalists, and at one point when it was a bit sort of settled down, wasn't it? Quite quiet with Perez in control. And at that stage, you're like, oh, this race is, not quite boring, but not a lot going on. And then they had to completely change their minds for that final 15-lap stint, because the fact that you could see drivers push, not have to back off, not have to preserve their tyres. Once Verstappen got ahead, Leclerc would come back at him. I think without that late yellow flag, there was, I think, the start of the penultimate lap, Leclerc was in a really good position to have a go at Verstappen back into turn one. He was very close, but DRS was cancelled at that stage. So that was that would have been very intriguing to see. But that was what was so positive, is that it's not just about who's ahead is definitely going to win. We're going to get battles. And as you said, we saw them up and down the field, and having a close field is something that really helps. McLaren were in that fight a bit more this weekend. Lando Norris is just chatting away with Esteban Ocon at the moment with the official F1 channel, but I'm going to try and grab Lando because he looks a lot happier than he was a week ago as well. Obviously, Bahrain was not a good start for McLaren, but they showed some strong signs of recovery here. And Esteban Ocon, that fight with Alonso, that was close to the line. I'll see if we can get Otmar Zafnauer again. I know we've heard a lot from him this weekend, but he had his head in his hands, sitting on the pit wall for a spell because it looked like those two Alpines were going to come together.
He did.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, you want to run down the finishing order, and while Chris is hunting down some more interviews there?
Sure, be glad to. Well, the winner, as you've heard, Max Verstappen. That's a win for Red Bull Powertrains and only their second ever start. Yeah, I know it's mostly Honda based, but still, they got the job done. And a great bounce back after Bahrain in the season opener a week ago, where both of their cars and their powertrains failed. Finishing second, Charles Leclerc. That's where he started. Third, Carlos Sainz in the second Ferrari, also where he started. And then poor Sergio Perez, who was caught out by a safety car and could never recover. Started from his first career pole and wound up just off the podium in fourth for Red Bull. Fifth was George Russell, who I think did a spectacular job, even though he only gained one position from where he started. He was clearly the leader of the Mercedes team this weekend.
And after sixth was seventh was Lando Norris, because sorry, but I've grabbed him as do some photo fans. But Lando, points on the board. How happy are you?
Sorry, how happy am I? Yeah, I'm reasonably happy. I would have loved to have been P6. That would have made me even happier, but I don't think today we could have done it. I got unlucky with the yellow flags. And the straight line speed of the Alpines were much higher than us. So kind of caught us out a little bit. And I think if there wasn't a yellow flag, we could have been P6, which would have been an amazing day for us. So some positive things for sure. We can look forward to hopefully more races like this if the tracks suit us. But I think realistically, we know we have a lot of work to do, especially if it's a slower speed track.
Did you find strengths in the car though this weekend? Were there certain things where you thought, actually, we've got a car that can race with other people?
Yeah, I think especially today, like we weren't expecting to fight the Alpines, honestly, and we were, and they were a long way ahead of us yesterday, and today we were much closer. So there were definitely positives, and I think this whole weekend has definitely been a lot more of a positive than Bahrain, which is good. I think it motivates the team, it keeps them working hard, it keeps them pushing, and we'll continue to try and make the improvements in the areas that we're not so strong.
And one thing that you could do was race because your power unit looked competitive here, or a bit more competitive at least compared to Bahrain. Is that a fair assessment, or is that grimace on your face saying not?
It's harder to say because of the different wings here. I think everyone in Bahrain kind of runs max downforce, and you see more exactly how it is. Here's a bit different. Everyone can run lower wings and stuff, and we're definitely maybe a little bit on the back foot, but it's not where we need to improve at the minute. We need to go around the corners quicker first.
Okay. Thank you, Lando. Cheers very much. So am I. Thank you. I've just been told that someone else is live on air. We're all live on here. I feel like Martin Brundle telling people off. Anyway, yeah, that was Lando. Sorry for that, Bob. I was hoping we timed that perfectly and you'd say his name.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Well, Bob, you want to pick up after Lando?
Sure. Yeah, well, we had Esteban Ocon there in 6th. Then the man you just heard from, Lando Norris, in 7th, picking up 4 places from where he started. Then Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri. And if you do manage to collar Gasly, Chris, I'd sure like to know why the Red Bull powertrain works so well for Red Bull and not so well for AlphaTauri. But maybe it's not powertrain related. Then
I can
Lewis
collar
Hamilton,
a different Frenchman for you, actually. I've got Esteban Ocon right in front of me, if that's all right. Esteban, that was a 10th finish again for you.
Yeah, it was a great race. There's been a lot of fighting, and with these cars to race, it's like a go-kart race. It's so fun. So yeah, plenty of fighting with Fernando, plenty of fighting with Lando. I got my revenge over last year with Bottas. I got quite a bit of knowledge from there. So yeah, it's been fun, and all in all, it's very good 2 weeks for myself. Obviously, probably my best career start of a Formula One, and it's been a very strong start to the season for the team as well. It's a shame that Fernando couldn't complete the race, obviously, but it would have been a double point finish again.
And yeah, you mentioned that fight with Fernando. That looked right on the edge from the outside. What was it like inside the cockpit?
No, I think it was nicely fair racing. I mean, we know how far we can push it together, me and Fernando, and it's a privilege to race against a legend like him. So, how close we are in qualifying, in the race, in this. I think there's more to come from both of us.
Well, we look forward to seeing how that goes. Well done today, Esteban.
No, great. Thanks, Chris.
Sorry, Bob. I'll let you get through that eventually.
Maybe.
Eventually.
What Esteban Ocon was talking about in terms of getting revenge on Valtteri Bottas last year, right at the finish, Bottas passed Ocon down to the line when Valtteri was driving the Mercedes. This time around, it was Ocon getting the jump on Norris down to the finish line off the final corner. So Gasly was 8th. Kevin Magnussen, sore neck and all, picked up a spot from his 10th starting position and finished 9th. Then Lewis Hamilton in 10th. Zhou Guanyu of China, good finish, just outside the points in 11th for Alfa Romeo. Nico Hülkenberg equaled Lewis Hamilton, picking up 5 spots from 17th to finish 12th. And keep in mind that, like Kevin Magnussen, Hülkenberg had no time in these cars until he got drawn in just before the final, just before the race, actually, last week. And then the cars that were not classified at the end, Alex Albon, Valtteri Bottas, Fernando Alonso, as you heard Ocon say, Daniel Ricciardo, Nicholas Latifi, who crashed for the second time this weekend and brought out the safety car that caught out the race leader Perez, and then Yuki Tsunoda, and of course we know that Mick Schumacher did not start the race after that horrifying crash yesterday.
All right,
so
gentlemen. Well, let's go ahead and get a break in. But before we do, our sponsors, the Speed City F1 post-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most advanced and sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. All right, let's go to a break. And when we come back, we'll have more from Chris in Saudi Arabia, and we'll be able to take some calls too. Listen to Speed City. Back after a break.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City. You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
The Alan Rudolph Racing Academy, located at Speed Sports Racing Park in Houston, is designed to teach driving skills at all levels. Alan Rudolph trained NASCAR driver Chase Elliott in road course racing. With an incredible 2020 season performance, Elliott now has added NASCAR Cup Series champion to the family legacy, joining his father Bill, who won the Cup Championship in 1988. This weekend, NASCAR Cups leader Chase Elliott is driving right here in Austin and is considered by some to be the favorite. Alan also trained American F3 driver Jack Crawford, whose ambition is to become a Formula One pilot with Red Bull Racing. Alan and instructors teach the concepts and skills needed before you get behind the wheel and out on the track, where you'll experience the thrill and speed of kart racing. Visit speedsportsracingpark.com. That's Speed Sports with a Z for more information. All right, so Chris Medland, do you have an interview for us, or we take a call from a caller?
Let's go for a call. I might be able to get a favorite of this caller if it's the right one, because Andreas Seidl's near me, but he's not quite free yet.
All right, well, let's go to Andy P. Andy P., how are you doing, buddy? Are you happy that we just got Lando on the air for you?
Oh, that was great. Thanks. Great
that was
timing.
just for you. What'd you think?
I love it. I mean, this formula this season is something else, isn't it? I mean, my God.
Unbelievable.
It's so much fun. You know, in the past, you used to have move, and move would be done, and that would be kind of it. This is move, counter move, and do you survive the counter move? And I'm loving it. It's throughout the grid. It's not just at the front. That was amazing. But I mean, there was battles all throughout the grid this race. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
You're absolutely right. You're now, it used to be when that move was done, you'd go, okay, race is over. And now you're looking at the clock going, how many more of these cycles back and forth do we have time left for?
Right.
That's what really, I love that part of it.
And even, you know, as they said, you know, in that one turn, I forget which one they called out, you want to be second into that turn because of the DRS zone behind it.
Well, Andy might want to hear who I have to speak to right now, actually, because I've timed this well as a McLaren fan, because I've got Andreas Seidl right. And Andreas, the first points on the board. How satisfied are you with today's race?
Yeah, I'm very happy, because after the difficult start for us, it was important today to score points. It's good for the morale in the team. It was good to see also that in terms of strategy, the team was spot on today. Pit stops were great. I think we did the fastest ones. And the pace, actually, even on the hard tires, were quite competitive compared to the Alpines or the Tauris, which was definitely not the case last week. So lots of positives. One negative is obviously that we had a technical issue with Daniel, and he had to stop the car, because also he could do some points today. But overall, very happy. Good motivation for the entire team to keep pushing hard and make sure we fight higher up again regularly moving forward.
I was going to say, is this a positive just because of the track suiting you more? Or is this a positive because you found ways of getting a bit more performance out of your car that you knew was there?
Yeah. Definitely we found more performance simply by all the learnings we could apply from last weekend. And then definitely this track here with the medium and fast corners was suiting our package better. At the same time, we do not get carried away with the result from today. We benefited also from some cars dropping out. But again, we know what we have to do. We know that we have to improve the performance of the car. The entire team is fully focused to do that, fully committed. Very united, and I can promise our fans it's only a matter of time, and we will be back.
And just finally, everyone's been saying about how exciting this racing is to watch. Is it exciting from your perspective too? And does it change the way you can actually go about your strategies, things like that?
Well, I think another big winner today are the fans again and the sport, because I think it was second race now in a row where we got a great confirmation that these new technical regulations are definitely going in the right way, because these close battles that we have seen over several laps, not just at the front but also in the midfield. The battle, for example, that Lando had with Esteban, it's just great. That's what we want to see, and I think we can. Looking forward to again a very exciting season.
And another strong result for you guys in Melbourne. Is that a track that might suit you?
Let us analyze first. Back home now, the first two race weekends, and then let's talk again on Thursday in Melbourne.
Yeah, long flight to go out there, so hopefully it's a good one for you. Thank you very much, Andreas, for your time.
There you go, Andy. When's your birthday? Because that's your birthday present. You got Lando Norris before you called and the team boss after you called. Why didn't you jump in with a question, Andy?
Well, Chris was doing such a good job, but I mean, and congrats on that. That I mean, he's a hell of a get, and one of the journos in the paddock that I truly trust with what he says. So that's awesome for you guys.
Well, you're talking to Chris, so you can tell him yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much, Andy. I can tell you that McLaren are definitely going to win next. No, don't trust me on that one. It might take a little while.
I'd love to see that, but I'm realistic too. I mean, they got a ways to go, but it was good to see them kind of up off the deck. But I mean, it's the first step. It all starts with one step, and that's all that really I can, as a fan, especially after last week.
Well, Andy, thanks, buddy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, buddy. We appreciate you calling. You guys at Outlap have a good show too. Andy does a podcast with a bunch of guys, so. Let's see. What else, Chris? Anything else happening there? Well, I'll ask Bob another question unless you got somebody right in front of you.
No, you're good. Let's hear from Bob. I'm just trying to dodge the pack up that's going on. This place is a tip right now because everyone's trying to pack up their freight to get it either home to their factories or take it to Australia.
Well, you know what, Bob? We do have a couple more callers. Let me try to squeeze another call in. How about Larry from Georgia? Hey, Larry, how are you, sir?
Well, I got to believe after watching that race on the radio, what a show that was.
Awesome.
I mean, for those two guys at the front to have worn tires, as long as those tires have been on that car, and sure, DRS had a lot to do with straight line speed to keep setting the track record. I mean, the fastest lap of the race, lap after lap. But to push that hard through the twisties to be able to utilize DRS, you were seeing true greatness out there between those two drivers. That's real, true greatness to run that fast at the end of the race on worn tires and keep setting fast lap, back and forth, the guy behind, pushing that hard. It was phenomenal racing. I would have loved to have witnessed it with my eyeballs. And I think, to me, the most interesting thing as the season goes forward is after the fifth that Lewis in pitch last year when he wasn't champion again, and his indecision as to whether or not to come back. His character is truly going to be tested this year in what is seemingly a substandard car that he's going to labor with all year. I really think we're going to see what he's truly made of.
Is that your prediction?
It's going to be an interesting watch. That's my prediction. I really is. I really think he's going to have a very, very difficult season, especially with the way Ferrari's gone back to the front. As hard as they've worked to get there, they're not giving it up. And Red Bull getting back there for the championship defense and what they've been able to do with that, quote, suspect, unquote, engine package.
Yeah.
What a season it's shaping up to be. This is shaping up to be one for the ages. But I really think Hamilton's going to be tested. We're going to find out what kind of character he truly has at his core, and it's going to be interesting to see.
Are you
and I'm pulling for him. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, are you behind the wheel of the big rig today?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was able to get back in last month. I was out for a time. It'd be the second time they put me out, but I'm back in. So.
Well, Larry, we always appreciate your thoughts, and prediction of Mercedes struggling for the rest of the year, that could be interesting. Thanks, Larry.
All righty, travel safe.
The other part is how much Russell's pushing him. He's no Valtteri Bottas.
True.
He has his own ambitions, and he's a heck of a wheel man. So I think he's going to be pushed both by the lack of performance by the car and George Russell. That's why I think he's going to be tested like never before.
Larry, you are the most well-informed truck driver on the planet. That very insightful.
You're just going to let Larry call in, right?
That's right. Thanks, Larry. We're going to let you go, buddy. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Bob, I'm going to come back to you here. I wanted to get your thoughts. I mean, I know we covered most of the up and down the grid, but what else, Bob, from today's race?
Well, a couple of points I'd like to make. One is it's a little difficult asking team principals or drivers about Melbourne coming up in 2 weeks because that track has been changed and it's going to be a lot faster. And so I think there's a lot of questions still to be answered about Melbourne. It's not the same old Melbourne anymore. And the other point is about the DRS, drag reduction system. Originally brought in, a lot of people thought, well, it's just a gimmick that somebody who's not quite as fast gets a chance to be faster and get around somebody. But we saw instances today, And Kevin Magnussen on Lewis Hamilton is one of the ones that occurred to me, where it becomes a real tactical weapon, because at one point, Magnussen even slowed up and opened the door on the inside so Hamilton could go by him just before they got to the DRS detection point, which means that Hamilton no longer had the DRS advantage on the next straightaway. Magnussen had it, and we saw what we saw. He blew on by. I'm sure that happened multiple times in this race, but it's a really tricky and I think a really clever thing for the driver to be aware where those detection points are and use them to, in a head-to-head battle.
Yeah, it's a good point. DRS, like that gimmicky, it thought of it first, and nobody really loved it, but it served its purpose. But this year, it's a whole different animal, isn't it? I mean, it's something we're really going to have to watch closely and see how it all plays out. But so far, so good. Chris Medland, how's it going out there?
It's going good. I've still not been run over by any forklift trucks, which is a good thing. And yeah, like Bob's spot on about the way that DRS has been used here. I mean, you could see it with some of the fights earlier in the race that some drivers were willing to get a move done into the final corner and they could stay ahead. Lewis Hamilton did a good job with that. I think George Russell, when he overtook Esteban Ocon, if I'm recalling it correctly, managed to get the move done so late that he got the DRS for the pit straight anyway, so then got ahead out the final corner and had DRS to pull away. And that really worked well. I think that was the perfect tactic if you could make that happen. But as he said, there's different ways of using it. And it's quite clear on this circuit, the best place to overtake anyone is into turn one, because you can't overtake them again until maybe turn 13 at a push, but realistically not until the end of the lap. So by giving up or losing a position into turn one, it's very hard to fight back for a number of corners. Now, fortunately, close cars could keep following each other and it meant the battle could continue. But if you really wanted to make a move stick, you wanted to do it into turn one. And I think that's why we saw so much of that cat and mouse going on. But just to also mention, I'm not sure if we've covered it yet, actually. I haven't seen an update on this, but the stewards did say they're reviewing the final 2 laps of that race because of all the yellow flag infringements that went on. So laps 49 and 50, because there was double waved yellow flags, multiple drivers apparently didn't slow down. They said Magnussen was under investigation, that they noted Perez and Sainz as well. And then they just said, right, we're looking at the whole final 2 laps. So it could be everyone gets off. It could be everyone gets penalized. It could be some drivers. I'll try and keep an eye on that in case anything drops while we're still on air.
Chris,
Max said on the radio that he thought Leclerc behind him had violated the yellow flag.
Yeah, he did. He complained about that, didn't he? But I actually don't think he had. When I looked at the sector times, it was very, very close between the two of them in the first sector. I think it was more that Max was unaware just how close Leclerc managed to get before the yellow flags came out, because I think without the yellow flag, Leclerc was in a position to attack him into turn one if he had DRS.
Hey, Chris, we were previously we talked about this 40% rule in the yellow flags in one of the earlier shows, but why do you think they would not just put a pit limit speed type of device for a yellow flag speed limiting device in the cars?
I think it's the way that they handle a yellow flag is in such an isolated space, such a small part of the track, a tiny little section, maybe one corner, that it would be a very strange kind of reaction for the car to go from, not quite racing speed, but a lot quicker to then slowing down to whatever limit it's been set, because with different corners, that limit would need to be different. You might be able to go through a certain corner at 120 mile an hour and another one at 60. So I think it becomes very complex to do. And they do kind of put it in the driver's hands in that scenario, because normally a double waved yellow means, there's another car around, but, marshals aren't on track. They wouldn't, it's going to be a dangerous situation if you go and join the accident someone else has had, not putting the people at risk, just kind of yourself. Whereas that's when we see the virtual safety car, like we saw for Ricciardo stopping and Alonso stopping, because marshals needed to come onto the track and push those cars. They couldn't have cars going even in a straight line at anywhere near racing speeds. So that's why that limit then comes in. So I think it's just trying to kind of get almost like a sliding scale of different reactions to a caution zone, essentially, and whether they make it just a small little section under yellow flags, a bigger one under virtual safety car, or go full safety car. And I think, to be fair, it's probably about right. It's just, the drivers know they're risking it then, that they're risking penalties if they don't slow enough. And when it happens so late in a race and there's still positions to be fought for, they don't want to give an inch to each other. So, it could be a late night trying to sort out the final classification, but I imagine it'll actually be that a lot of drivers didn't do what they should have, and there might be kind of multiple penalties that apply to everyone, and and we have a similar order by the end.
Excellent inside perspective. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Well, let's take a break. Before we do, I just want to say hey to all the people watching. I've seen lots of comments coming in. Nick Kinson says this season is on fire. Kevin Kelly, awesome race. Judah says, good to see you, Bob. You're the best. Old Timer says, what a race. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, this is Gene Haas, and this is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
We're going right to the line in this race for the win. Max Verstappen is leading. Leclerc is closing, coming into the final corner. He looks too far back. He's going to get the DRS out across the line into the final corner. He comes onto the brakes. Verstappen exits the final turn. He's going to just have enough. It's going to be one of the tightest finishes that we've seen in Formula One. But the checkered flag is there, and Max Verstappen wins in Saudi Arabia by half a second. He fights Charles Leclerc all the way. He had to work hard to win a lot of races last year, but that is one of the hardest working races that Verstappen will have ever done. He wins in
CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60. Our digital world is more than just interconnected, it's interdependent. And because of that, security is a top concern for every organization. The Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team knows they're a potential target for a host of digital attacks, which is why they leverage the CrowdStrike Falcon platform to deploy end-to-end security solutions. CrowdStrike revolutionized cybersecurity by harnessing the speed and power of the cloud to identify and stop the most sophisticated cyber attacks. Our cloud-native Falcon platform protects and defends organizations against increasingly complex threats, so you can have the peace of mind to focus on your business momentum, not what's trying to stop it. That's protection that powers you. To learn more and to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com/XM. All right, well, Chris Medland's with us, and we got Bob Varsha and Les Kaiser. And Chris, you got an interview with Valtteri Bottas during right after the race, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into that. And here you had some good questions. Let's go with Bottas.
Valtteri, that looked like a promising race for much of it, and then you had to retire the car. What happened?
The engine temperature started to rise initially slowly, but then really rapidly, to the point that there was nothing to do on track with cooling-wise to make the race. So we retired the car, not to destroy the engine, basically.
I mean, how frustrating is that on another evening where you looked really quick, really competitive, pushing for more points?
Yeah, I think we were realistically fighting for 6th place, I think. So more or less similar performance than in Bahrain. And I really enjoyed the racing and the car felt good. So it is a shame, but at the same time, positive thing is that even on this more high-speed track, the performance seemed to be okay. So we have a good car.
Yeah, just finally on that point, is this an Alfa Romeo that you think will be competitive everywhere you go?
Based on these first 2 races, I think so, yes. But everyone will improve, of course, so we need to make sure we do as well.
Yeah, they do seem to be pretty competitive. What do you think, Bob? I mean, you think, 2 questions for you. I mean, do you think that they are going to be able to maintain that competitiveness? And what about the reliability this year? It's been a wild card, and Haas has been reliable, but what do you think about those?
Well, as Christian Horner said earlier in this hour, the development is nonstop. It's a white-hot environment. Everybody's always looking for a fraction of a second advantage. And so that's what's going to happen going forward. And as Valtteri rightly pointed out, we've got to stay in step, because if you're not improving, you're falling behind because everybody else is improving. Having said that, it's interesting to hear that his Ferrari engine was overheating. I think that's the same problem that afflicted the McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo, which of course is a Mercedes engine. So, that suggests that cooling these hybrid packages, these powertrains, is a critical element of the whole package that hasn't quite been figured out yet under these new aero rules. So I think that was interesting. And I forgot what your other question was.
I was just talking about how, it's really all the same question, but being competitive. Bottas is saying they think they're going to be competitive all the way through.
Well, it's kind of like the Haas situation where Nikita Mazepin's out, plop Kevin Magnussen in the car, and suddenly, you're 5/6 of a second quicker and you're scoring points. That's the difference a driver can make. And I think that's the case of Valtteri Bottas at Alfa Romeo. I mean, he's got a rookie for a teammate, to be sure, so the comparison's probably not fair, but you get a guy with Mercedes quality like Bottas, who, as we pointed out in our race show, in 103 races without failing to qualify in Q3. So, Bottas got in that Alfa, yes, with the improved Ferrari engine, but he's using it the way an ace does. He's quite the team leader there. So, yeah, the driver still makes a difference. I think if it comes down to that, having Bottas at Alfa will keep them competitive, just like having Magnussen in the Haas will keep them competitive.
Chris Medland, what time is
jumping on something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say something Bob said there actually about the overheating and the fact that we had it one from a Ferrari car, one from a Mercedes car, and we're waiting to see what actually Fernando Alonso's problem was as well that stopped him in the Renault-powered Alpine. But it was hotter here today. It was hotter today than it has been all week. The wind was less as well, so there was less cooling in terms of naturally that was happening, but it was noticeably warmer during the day, and that kind of remained this evening. Now, it's not crazy hot by any stretch. This is kind of normal temperatures for a race anywhere that we will go racing, but as Bob was alluding to, it comes down to how the teams want to cool the cars. They have settings that they put on, and kind of the less cooling they're running, the more efficient aerodynamically the car is. So they're kind of trading off those two things. And in this case, it looks like maybe a couple of teams pushed that envelope a little bit too hard when it was slightly warmer today than it had been the previous 2 days. And then if you add in racing closely, fighting with people, pushing hard, then you don't get time to cool the car. And that is another thing that we used to see, didn't we? That we haven't really seen this year so much, where drivers would drop back into quite a big gap behind another car to cool the car, cool the engine, cool the brakes, just try and manage the car a little bit and its systems. And we're getting less of that this year because they're able to race more closely. So, maybe that's part of the new challenge they've got.
Yeah, and how this all plays in, it's all aerodynamically related, and we still saw cars porpoising today. I saw Magnussen's car bouncing down one of the straightaways. Chris, are they still talking about that out there?
Yeah, they are. I mean, we could see it with some cars a lot. And I was speaking to Carlos Sainz's manager and actually Carlos Sainz Sr. as well on Saturday after FP3. And Carlos has been struggling a lot with it throughout that session. And there's a point he was on the run to turn 13, and you could really see it. They showed like the onboard and then they showed offboard, and it was as bad as it had been in the first test. So it shows that there's a real fine line that they're kind of like towing at the moment, where if you lower the car that bit too much, looking for a bit more performance, you will create a pretty big problem. It's not gone away. It's just that they now all roughly know where that line is, and they go up to it and ideally not over it.
Well, we do have another caller on the line, and this gentleman, he hauls Corvettes for a living. Corvette Mike, are there any Corvettes running out there porpoising right now?
Not that I'm aware of. How are you guys?
Good. Where are you right now, anyway?
Oh, I'm in the cold state of Ohio. It's cold and snowy, but I'm headed to Kentucky to get some more Corvettes. But I was wanting you guys to think about this one. Max and Charles Leclerc are kind of close competitors right now, but look at the two styles of personality. Max is, I'm always for an underdog and up and coming, but he's watching white lines. He's not racing. I'm just thinking, and Charles is so quiet all of a sudden. I think they're equal in their abilities, but they're so different at going to task.
That's a good point, Mike. And the commentators were talking about at the beginning of that battle at the end there, where Charles Leclerc was smartly holding back when he needed to, and Max saw a gap and was going for it. And it looked like it took a couple of those cycles for Max to learn. And you can just tell his tone on the radio. It does seem like Leclerc is a little more controlled and thoughtful, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm no one to speak on that issue because I certainly speak way too fast without thinking. But I was just watching the styles and of course, how they go about accomplishing their goals, and it's an open field. It takes all kinds, and all of them are not pretty and nice.
Well, it's true. It's true, Mike. And hey, Mike, we appreciate you tuning in out there in the trucking land, and we appreciate your call too. Thanks, buddy. Hey, Chris Medland, let me ask you about that impression. You know, we can pretty clearly hear it on the radio that Max is very much his thoughts are right there in our face, and Leclerc does seem to be more calm and thoughtful. I mean, would you say that when you see them in person?
A little. We've heard Leclerc be a bit animated at times on the radio too, but I do think Leclerc's kind of approach is a slightly more chilled one in the car, and I think that's partly their characters too, in terms of how easy wound up they can be, and that kind of plays into their driving styles. But for Max, like many drivers, you can hear them on team radio and you think, wow, yeah, they're complaining a lot, or they seem angry, or they seem fired up. And of course, they're driving amazing racing cars at 200 miles an hour. Like, their heart rates are so high that it's hard to stay calm or sound calm. And they get out the car and they don't think about it twice. So like, yeah, well, that's just how quickly I have to get the information across to my engineer. And actually, after last week's race, Max was asked about that, about whether he was getting angry at his engineer when he was having trouble and struggling with the steering and all the problems that were starting to hit his car before he retired. And he's like, well, I can only talk to my race engineer, to Gianpiero Lambesi, who is his race engineer. He said, I can only speak to GP. So it's not aimed at him. It's just getting across my feeling, my opinion at that split second in the car. As soon as he gets out, completely chilled again. And I think that always amazes me about these drivers. And it was something that was really nice to see with Leclerc too today, as mentioned, that he was congratulating Max, saying how great it was, how many risks they're taking, how close it was, but they're not shouting at each other. And there's some clear respect there, which I think actually stems back to 2019. They actually had some run-ins in karting when they were a lot younger, but back in 2019, they had a few really close fights. Austria, where Max won, and then Silverstone, when Leclerc came out on top by kind of fighting fire with fire. And I think they both saw in each other that they can push each other at the limit and know roughly where that is. So I think that's another reason that they probably stayed a little bit more calm than maybe they would if they felt someone was driving slightly over the limit or driving in a way that they weren't going to be certain about.
Yeah, what do you think, Bob?
Well, I was, as Chris was speaking, I was thinking back to something Martin Brundle said when he was Ayrton Senna's teammate at Benetton back in the day. And Martin said, most drivers use about 85% of their brain power and their cognitive skills to drive their own race car, and then about another 15% thinking about what's going on around them. Whose lap times are better? Where are we on fuel and tires? How much is left in the race? All that sort of thing. But he said Senna used probably 50% to drive around. I'm sorry, I was thinking about Michael Schumacher, not Ayrton Senna. I apologize. He said Schumacher was using about 50% of his ability to drive the race car very quickly and 50% on picking up what's going on around and asking the team on the pit wall for this, that, and the other thing, and pit stop schedules and what the trends were, what was likely to happen, and the relative speed of different tires, new or used, and all that sort of thing, which Brundle said was, one of the most amazing things about Michael Schumacher that he could mention. And then, of course, you got guys like Kimi Räikkönen and his famous phrase, "Leave me alone, I know what I'm doing." So, it runs a gamut. These are all different individuals. It's great to see that kind of sportsmanship and heavy competition, as Chris just mentioned. And, that's what we all keep.
Yeah, I can't imagine using only 50% of my brain to drive a Formula One car. I'm using all of mine just to talk on the radio. We had a lot of cars retired today too, Bob. That was, let's see, we had Tsunoda, Latifi, Ricciardo, Alonso, Bottas. So yeah, that's a big number of retirement cars. I think you mentioned that during the reliability discussion, but
and I think time would be well spent learning what it was that took those cars out, because I think Chris mentioned, could it be more overheating? More people who just haven't got this aerodynamic balance right between low drag and proper cooling. We shall see. We know in Ricciardo's case that was the problem, was overheating. Bottas the same. Maybe Alonso. Maybe, Latifi went out when he crashed. Tsunoda never started the race, and I don't know what Alex Albon's problem was, but there you go.
Well, let's go ahead and
Alex Albon's problem was hitting Lance Stroll in the end. That was just the penultimate lap. He basically tore off a corner of the car by hitting Stroll trying to overtake him in turn one.
That's right.
I haven't actually seen if there was a penalty for that yet. I'm going to keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's get our last break in. When we come back, we'll wrap up our coverage from today's race. You're listening to Speed City F1 live from Austin, Texas. Back after these.
Hello to everyone. This is Gunther Steiner. This is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
Go, Chris Medland.
Wow, we just heard Gunther Steiner there, and now I'm talking to Gunther Steiner. This is like Inception. Gunther, 2 points on the board for Kevin provisionally. Firstly, have you heard anything else about investigations into yellow flags at the end of that race?
No, I didn't hear anything yet, so I'm here and wait.
Yeah, we're doing the same. But if we assume that he does stay where he was, how do you view that result? The car looked very quick at times, but the safety car towards the end, or the virtual safety car, didn't really seem to play into your hands.
No, the biggest issue was we started on a different strategy, like 2 other cars, and the safety car came out at the wrong time for us. At the most inconvenient time. But on the other side, you can see three cars stopped out in front of us. So we are lucky that one. But I think if the strategy would have worked out and the safety car wouldn't have come out, we could have been 7th. But if and when you cannot get points. But what I'm really happy about is the performance of the car. Kevin is happy. So if he didn't make the points here, we will make them somewhere else. So going forward, I think we are all now we know that the car is need always find the right sweet spot with the setup, and Kevin and Mick will have good results, both of them.
Yeah, is it quite a nice position to be in now, that second race of the season, and you're thinking, 9th isn't quite the maximum this car could have got? We could have had more points.
No, it's always disappointing. You always want maximum, but then if you think about it, you cannot be too greedy. Last year for 2 points, I would have fucked the whole paddock. So it's a good place to be. And now we need to see what is coming out, if you're summoned or not, and what is happening with the yellow flag. But there was more than one driver. He slowed down. Kevin slowed down. He was off the time. So I don't see a big issue. And the other drivers did very similar things. So let's see what's coming out. But hopefully we can keep the 2 points and go to Melbourne and get some more.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm sure America doesn't mind, but I'll apologise for the language that was in that previous answer. But yeah, you mentioned Melbourne. You'll have 2 cars back there. How was Mick today? Are you happy that he'll be fine to race in the next race?
Yeah, he will be perfectly fine. He will be perfectly fine to race in Melbourne. So the car will be ready, and he will be ready as well. So I don't see an issue with it.
Great stuff. Good to thank you very much, and well done today.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, you've achieved it all. Gunther said the F word on our show. I think we can just go ahead and shut the whole thing down now. That's
we'll probably owe him another dinner of Mexican food dinner.
He's frowning at me that he didn't. He's frowning at me that he didn't say the F word, but I definitely heard him say the F word. What?
I don't know. I thought he said back of the
grid. What did you say you would do to the whole paddock?
Hug them.
Fantastic.
So I think that's me apologizing to America for that language. Sorry about that, everyone. Slandering Gunther Steiner by pretending he's 4.
There you go.
Sorry.
Oh, fantastic. Oh. Hey, so Gunther Steiner is they're second in the Formula 1.5 championship. You remember when Gene Haas said there's the leaders, the best of the best, and then they're 1.5. So they're now in 5th place after 2 races. I think he's got to be happy with that. Don't you guys think?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at Constructors' Championship. Ferrari, 78 points. Mercedes with 38. And Red Bull with 37. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So 78 for Ferrari, 38 for Mercedes, 37 for Red Bull, and 16 for Renault. Haas with 12. And Alfa Romeo with 9. AlphaTauri with 8. McLaren with 6. And 0 for Aston Martin and Williams. So the producer has just handed me, fresh off the presses, from the FIA, a notification. The stewards have received a report from the race director, summoned documents 50 and 51, heard from the drivers and team members, have considered the following matter. Alexander Albon, collision with car 18. So let's see. That's Lance Stroll.
Lance Stroll.
Yeah. Drop of 3 grid position at the driver's next event and 2 penalty. Wow. Okay. So this was actually something with some real consequences. What do you think, Bob? appropriate?
Well, I guess I'd have to see that incident again. But Albon doesn't have any penalty points since he's coming back to the sport. I'm not sure Stroll's situation. In fact, I'm going to look into that, see who has how many penalty points right now and when those points come off the board. Because the season has been so heated and the racing has been so close, there's going to be penalty points handed down here and there, even though I would say that race director Nels Vittich again is controlling the race with a fairly light hand. I mean, he's not out there throwing penalties around. So I have to assume it's fair until I can prove otherwise.
Chris, we got about 45 seconds. What do you think about that?
Well, I was actually about to say, Bob's right, but what's positive is actually we had Eduardo Freitas here for this race. So we've had one of each race director. So they've both taken the same approach, because I agree with him. Like, they've had quite a light hand on the whole. I actually think that's slightly harsh. I think the kind of penalty was served by Albon retiring from the race. I guess if you cause a collision, you cause a collision, but it looked like, two guys trying to race hard into turn one late in a race to me.
Right.
It was predominantly on Albon. He was the one who needed some form of penalty, but I don't know if 3 places might be slightly harsh. Maybe that was all that was available to them. But as you say, I don't think he'll have many penalty points. So it'll just hurt him in Melbourne. Hopefully those track changes mean he can overtake if the car's quick enough.
All right, we're almost out of time. A couple quick points. People chatting on YouTube love the discussion. Yuri talks about how people maybe confuse the direct and outspoken language of the Dutch with anger and frustration. Good point, Yuri. And Bob, lots of people on YouTube saying they're excited to see you. And same with you, Chris. Everybody thinks it's fantastic coverage. And speaking of Chris Medland, he and I are going to do our new show again, our second episode of the new show. You can hear it on SiriusXM channel 81, the ESPN Extra channel on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Kind of a midweek catch-up and look forward to Formula One show. And yeah, Chris, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this week. But I want to thank Chris from Saudi Arabia and Bob from his home in Atlanta zooming in. We didn't get to have Jonathan Green. He's doing Trans Am this week, and Dave O'Neill joins us when he can. He's one of the hardest men in working in motorsports. But thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in on the radio. Thanks for tuning in on Facebook and YouTube. And, of course, go to our website speedcitybroadcast.com to check out all our coverage options. Thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you next Sunday.
Ciao, y'all.